Hello there, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan, and the third episode of The Acolyte is out, and here's my spoiler-free take on that episode. Well, the first two episodes had me in the neutral column. The third episode really was terrific for a variety of different reasons, but, the main reason why I liked it is because I feel like the writers actually understand what Star Wars is supposed to be about. And now you guys might be like, well, Alan, you don't know what you're talking about, but I've made more than 1,000 videos about Star Wars at this point. I have a master's degree in Star Wars lore. I don't know if I should be admitting that, but excuse me for saying that I know what I'm talking about here. Anyway, I loved Andor straight off the bat because of the tone of the show. I knew it was going to be something special. The Acolyte is a bit more like Ahsoka. Ahsoka started out a bit slow. I think we can blame Filoni and Ahsoka for wanting to really self-indulge on that Rebels connection. But that duel between Ahsoka and Baylan Skoll in Episode 4, The Acolyte Episode 3 really connected with me. I mean, it's beautiful, mysterious, fresh, but most importantly, this is where Star Wars always shines the most. This episode had a lot of heart. Whenever people ask me what Star Wars is about, I usually give a pretty canned answer. It's about whatever you want it to be. The galaxy is large enough for everyone at this point. I mean, there's so much lore, so much different genres. Everyone can find something here. But if you want a more serious answer, a more specific answer, we have to go all the way back to when Star Wars was just Star Wars. Not even A New Hope had been created. It was just one indie film made by a little-known director at the time, George Lucas. Lucas was many things, but what I respected the most about him was his understanding of the human experience. Before he got into filmmaking and after he quit race car driving, George Lucas studied anthropology. He was fascinated with religion and mythology, the shared ideas and traditions passed down by humanity for generations that were designed to nurture the new generations and guide them towards adulthood. Like many great thinkers, George Lucas always wanted to leave something positive behind for humanity. And so for him, Star Wars has always been about, well, I'll let him explain it himself.
It's hard for people to realize, and I'm not supposed to say this, and I wasn't supposed to say it then, but, it's a film for 12-year-olds.
This is something we all really need to remember, especially with this rabid culture war and gatekeeping that's happening in the fandom. At the end of the day, we have to remember as content creators, as fans, when we're typing things on the internet, that on the other end of your comments might be a 12-year-old. And to rob them of experiencing Star Wars for the first time with their own fresh eyes and own opinions, that's really unfair. I mean, thank God we didn't have social media when the prequels came out, and I wasn't exposed to all the hatred that older fans had for that series and Jar Jar Binks. I mean, who knows how that negativity could have affected my enjoyment of the franchise. Maybe I would have never become a Star Wars fan. Maybe I would have never seen the prequels at all, and instead of being a Star Wars YouTuber, I would focus on My Little Pony, which is my second love in life. But anyway, let's get back to why George Lucas created Star Wars for children.
It was designed to be a film like mythology of this is what we stand for. You're about to enter the real world. You're 12 years old. You're going to go on into the big world. You're moving away from your parents being the center focus. You're probably scared. You don't know what's going to happen. And here's a little idea of some of the things you should pay attention to. Friendships, honesty, and trust, and doing the right thing, living on the light side, avoiding the dark side. Those are things that it was meant to do. And
as a self-described Buddhist Methodist, which I don't think is a real thing, I think George Lucas was just trying to explain that he's a spiritual individual who believes in God, but is probably against institutionalized religion. I think I understand what he's trying to do here. Create a value system for those who might grow up without religion or might not like institutionalized religion. In a lot of ways, this channel is built on the same idea. This is how I try to shape my content. I want to promote good ideas and good values that I can find and mine from Star Wars. I want to speak about ethics, morality from a more rational point of view and explain why it's important. It's all completely self-serving, of course. I don't want the world to rip itself apart when I'm standing on it. But yeah, anyway, this is where spoilers for episode 3 begin. So if you haven't seen that episode, I really highly recommend, if you've seen the first two, check this one out. I really enjoyed it. First, let's talk about the world of Brendok. The opening sequence is beautiful in a very classic Star Wars way. The landscape, the slightly alien-looking fauna, and the poisonous bunta tree. This planet is alive and wondrous, and it ticks all the boxes for an old adventurer like me. I want to be there. I want to travel to Brendok. This is the feeling I get, and this is what makes Star Wars so special. The same feeling is why Luke Skywalker wanted to leave home. The same feeling is why Osha wants to leave her coven to see the wider world. And once again, Osha is the character who shines the most on screen. She and her twin sister are two sides of the same coin. While May fully embraces the path laid out before her by her witch sisters and mothers.
Do you wonder what could be out there besides Brendok? No. Why not? Everything I need is here.
Osha consciously rejects not only her relationship with May, but her destiny as a witch.
I want my own life. I don't want to share it with May. I want to see the galaxy.
Not only because she is open-minded and wants to see the world, but also because of the situation her coven is in. Perhaps in a more open-minded world, where the Jedi's grip on who can use the Force and how is not as tight, maybe the Coven would live a more free and open life, and they wouldn't have to hide in that epic fortress perched between two mountaintops. Seriously, visual-wise, they did an excellent job with this one. I am terrified of witches, and the Coven is no different. They speak magical tongues while squirming into the air. It's kind of cringy for me. I don't like that kind of stuff, and it naturally makes me want to grab my firstborn child and, protect her. But there's also another ominous side to them. These witches are militant. They're extreme because the galaxy in many ways is made them this way. The Jedi frown upon the witches because their Force ceremonies are perceived as dark side oriented. For those of you who are keyed into the culture wars, well, this is I guess what you were talking about, right? I think this dynamic between the Jedi and the witches is a very subtle and smart way to explain to the world the headspace of individuals like Leslie Headland, the creator of this show, who is a part of the LGBT community. When I see the militant LGBT crowd, I'm a bit turned off by them. My own experiences with the LGBT community amongst my family and friends is that most of them, they just want to get along with their lives. This is just my own personal politics, but I'm really against militancy of any kind in politics. I just don't like it because it's extreme in nature and designed to rile up the opposite side, and usually it creates more problems than it solves. I'm all about compromise. But I also understand why a lot of LGBT people can't remain silent. I mean, imagine growing up your entire life being told that your way of living life is degenerate, that you're evil, that you need to be, killed or punished. I mean, right now in the Middle East and in parts of Africa, there are at least 10 countries where homosexuality is punished by death. Something that I wish more progressive people would focus on, if I'm being honest. But yeah, at the end of the day, love is love. And if you spend your time trying to stop other people from finding love in this chaotic world where love is already hard to find, well, that's a bitch move. Empathy, guys, empathy. Life is so short, and it can be beautiful if you focus more on the things you love rather than stopping others from pursuing the things they love. And politics, when tastefully incorporated into fiction, well, that's where sci-fi has always shined. I mean, politics was always designed to be in this genre. Sci-fi was designed to explore ideas in our own lives, but in a different time, in a different place, with similar people. And guys, a lot of critics are saying that there's LGBT propaganda here, there's extreme militancy here, and I don't see any of it. There's no ham-fisted attacks against straight people, white people, or men, and this is something I will call out when I see. I don't like that either from the extreme left. There's also no over-the-top scissoring or tongue-kissing. I mean, this is still Star Wars. It's PG. Plus, if you don't like seeing two girls hook up, it's kind of gay. Instead, what we see here is the experiences of a marginalized group of people. I know people are triggered by Headland, but just look at episode 3 instead of reading all of her interviews. Look at the content she creates. The Jedi who represent the institutions that crack down on alternative Force styles are not represented as an evil organization that I secretly want them to be. And the witches living that alternative lifestyle are not some perfect organization of superwomen who can shoot rainbows out of their asses, which I secretly would also like to see. No, these witches have flaws as well. There's a criticism towards this community as well, and this is a very honest approach to things, and I commend the writers of the shows for not treating us like idiots and having nuance.
The Jedi are bad. The Jedi are good.
This isn't about good or bad. This is about power and who is allowed to use it.
Instead, like in real life, there are good people, there are bad people, there are people who are driven by fear, and people who are courageous enough to not be driven by fear. Mother Coral, who bore both May and Osha thanks to some evil witch magic ritual, is driven by fear. She punishes Osha and May for venturing out of their fortress.
What are you doing here? How many times have I told you? It is not safe out here.
Sorry, Mother Coral.
There will be consequences for breaking the rules.
It isn't fair. I'm old enough to go outside the fortress wall.
She means well, but in doing so, she pushes Osha, who is naturally curious about the world, to reject the witch coven. And then with the Jedi, it's clear that Master Indara is a cold, relentless soldier for the Jedi Order, no questions asked. As we've mentioned in previous videos, my problem is not with individual Jedi. There are a lot of great Jedi that I admire and like. It's just I don't like institutions that are treated like, holy institutions with no checks and balances. It's a recipe for disaster. Indara is just doing her job here, but perhaps she needs to step back and examine just what her job entitles, and whether the Jedi's fear of alternative force cults is actually warranted.
We are concerned that you are training children. The Republic lost.
Brendok is not a part of the Republic.
There are no children here.
Now, what I really love about how the story plays out is the conflict itself, and this might be because there's a more feminine hand guiding the writing here. The conflict between the Jedi and the witches is more subtle and surprising. Despite both sides being opposed to each other and fearing each other, calmer heads actually prevail. There's no massive battle or lightsaber fight, which could be cool, but let's be honest, is overplayed somewhat. And this is all thanks to two individuals who are not driven by fear, but driven by their openness and their compassion. We have the regal mother, Anastasia, who brings maternal warmth and kindness to the screen in every scene she walks through. She understands the danger the Jedi poses her coven, yet she's still open-minded enough to allow her children to make up their own minds. She also understands that kids need to be kids sometimes.
Mama!
My sweet girls must have sweet treats. Don't you think so, Coral?
I mean, it's pretty rough to grow up in a society where you're the only children. And you can also tell that Mother Anastasia's wisdom cools down house mom Mother Coral over here. Excuse her though, guys, she's a Zabrak, she's got horns on her head, she can't help who she is. And on the Jedi side, we have the paternal warmth of Jedi Master Soul, whose kind eyes and gentle demeanor seems to put everyone at ease, even when he draws his lightsaber and tries to bribe a child with it.
What is your name?
Osha.
Osha. My name is Soul.
And with those simple words, he de-escalates the situation. And Master Indara takes that opening to push her agenda forward in a softer manner. Instead of fighting, these two sides negotiate terms. The reality is the witches have every right to be afraid of the Jedi taking their children, and the Jedi have every right to be afraid that the witches are trying to create the next dark side menace. Fear drives so much human interaction and suffering, and it's truly sad, especially when fear is levied against your fellow man and woman. Because if we drop that fear and actually communicate and talk, we'll find out that all humans share very common desires and traits. Our love of good food, good times, our love of family and friends, and a desire to protect our communities. This is something that the courageous Mother Anastasia sees. She sees the goodness in Soul, the individual, and understands that Osha must choose her own way in life and follow her own destiny to bring reasonable safety standards to the workplace. This show is designed like many Star Wars shows to give us hope that even when two extremely different organizations face each other and are debating over something as serious as the future of a child, that calmer heads can still prevail if people are open-minded and courageous enough to make connections with each other. This is how we bring communities together, how we erase the fear that can poison the waters. Tolerance for the LGBT community in the Western world has, reached new heights in the last few decades, and this isn't just because of activism and awareness. Of course, getting rid of some archaic laws was the first step, but what really got the ball moving, I think, is the discovery by many people that, their childhood friends, their family members, people who they love, all turned out to be gay. These are people we love because they are outstanding and terrific people. And it's that connection we have to them that allows us to be introduced to a more strange and foreign and perhaps even scary concept of homosexuality. You know, I personally really hate that this is a political issue, because I think it really is a human issue, a social issue. And, you know, it might be surprising to some of you guys, but I have some very conservative views, along with all other types of views, liberal and moderate views. And the conservative side of me has always believed that government should not interfere in the lives of people, especially something as intimate as who they choose to love. But anyway, I have so much hope for the next generation, because they seem to grow up without a lot of the fears and hatred we had when we were growing up. I mean, take a look at Osha, who was born in this coven and taught to fear the Jedi and hate them. She could very well have turned out just to be like May, but her natural curiosity, her continued rejection of the coven's way of life, this is just another layer of the story. This is actually the hero's journey that George Lucas talks about all the time. Osha is quickly becoming one of my favorite characters in the show, because it's clear now that this is who she is. Like all of the great heroes of Star Wars, she is chosen not only because she is Force sensitive, but because she is driven by an unstoppable force to make the most out of her life. She has the strength to leave everything behind and to pursue her own goals, to be different. I've always feared those who fall in line blindly and gather in large groups and let other people think for them. And while I understand that not everyone can be an independent thinker, I think there is value in trying to encourage that type of behavior, or at least hope that at least all of us can exhibit some independence, so we don't fall into the traps and ideologies created by malicious people. Now, being an independent thinker doesn't solve everything, because the world is crazy, and I find my own politics flip-flopping all the time. I mean, I realize the dumbest thing you can do in life is to believe that you have all of the answers and stop trying to, discover and uncover the truth. But I also believe that if we're all blindly trying to feel our way through this crazy experience that is life, at least we should follow our hearts and be true to who we are, so that if we do wake up one day, we don't realize we've wasted our entire lives pursuing someone else's dream. I think that's something that Mother Anastasia really understands well.
Right now you want to be a Jedi. But as you grow, what you want, it changes, it shifts. Like the seasons.
But she's an extremely wise woman, a matriarch of this society, and so she understands you can't really squeeze the things you love. You have to let it grow freely, and you cannot build walls around it to protect it, because that will only contain its true potential, or worse, make it rebel against you.
Destiny is not decided for you by an anonymous force. You get to make a choice, Osha. If you want to pull the thread, then pull it.
There's so much wisdom in these scenes, and I think this is what George Lucas always intended Star Wars to be. He wanted it to be entertaining, to make money, of course, but also impart some valuable lessons to the viewers. Lessons that are taught through empathy and compassion. And I always like to think about how mythology like this, in a way, is like cultural technology, painstakingly learned lessons designed to be passed down from one generation to another, so we don't repeat the mistakes of past generations. This is what Star Wars has always been about, and I think the Acolyte is off to a pretty good start. Now, notice, guys, I haven't really talked about any of the technical aspects, or like the things I usually talk about, and yeah, there are probably some things here I don't like the explosion that kills off the entire coven. It's a little wonky, it's a little weird. We don't really see how everyone dies. They're just like in a pile. Like, there's a lot of those little things, and I think if you come into this show with that mindset of nitpicking every little small detail, you're gonna miss the values and the messages here. I mean, clearly this is a different type of storyteller. I mean, again, I say that this is a story with a more feminine gaze, and I think that's really true. And for a lot of male audiences who might be used to only consuming content that is driven by male creators, you'll find a little balance in life if you can open your mind to these things. Again, I'm not trying to be malicious towards you guys. I really think that opening your mind will bring you a lot of peace and happiness in ways you won't even expect or begin to understand until you get older. But I'm really happy with what they're doing with the Acolytes, and I hope you guys get a chance to check it out as well. Anyway, guys, don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. We'll be pumping out a lot of videos covering all the little interesting things we've seen in the Acolytes. My name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy. I'll see you next time.